You're listening to Impulse to Innovation. The Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Helen Mees. As a global community of mechanical engineers with over 120,000 members in 140 countries, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers has been at the heart of the engineering profession since 1847. The institution's mission is to improve the world through engineering by sharing the latest news, views and insight into the creative world of technology and the people that make it happen. Well, what a year it's been! Who'd have thought at the beginning of 2020 we would not only have an IMechE podcast show, but we would be socially distanced, locked down and masked up. And instead of having a cosy chat with my two wonderful guests today in the comfort of the Institution HQ, we are sadly miles apart and on the internet. Colin, Terry, thank you so much for joining me today. A happy Christmas to you both, and I hope it's going to be a happier new year for 2021. So let's start with this year though. Terry, I'm guessing you weren't expecting this for your presidential year. How have you managed to carry out your duties despite the pandemic? And how has the membership stepped up to the challenge during the last 10 months?
Well, Helen, that's a really good question. I made my commitment to be in the race for president in December 2018, and words like lockdown, furlough, and COVID would have required an explanation. As you know, I became president in May this year. And by then, most of us were enduring lockdown conditions and normal daily life was practically non-existent. So difficult times. The situation has presented everyone with new challenges, and we've all had to adapt, and we continue to adapt, to what is perhaps the emerging new normal. Yeah. So as president, it's meant what would have been a very physical experience, meeting and greeting our members all over the world, has been an entirely virtual experience, almost like being immersed in a video game.
Yeah.
Now, I am a naturally glass half full person, so I would hastily add that, it's not all negative. It has allowed me to be significantly more efficient, meeting more people in more countries than perhaps I would have done, and getting through more assignments and probably spending more direct time with the leadership team, and for sure spending practically nothing on the presidential budget. I've heard many past presidents talk about their worry of increasing waistlines during their year as president, and I can tell you that is absolutely not an issue for me.
Excellent.
And as to the members, well, they have absolutely stepped up to the challenge. Engineers solve problems, and I've been absolutely amazed by the reports of our members contributing to the frontline efforts of to mitigate the pandemic. Delivering the Nightingale hospitals, manufacturing PPE, designing and building ventilators, or just simply volunteering their time to help others.
Yeah.
As you know, we have created a COVID task force as well in the institution under the leadership of our immediate past president, Professor Joe McGeoch, with Frank Mills and Mark Jackson and Peter Hebbard and others. And they have mustered a cross-sector team from our global membership, to share the learning from their own countries. And that has resulted in production of a COVID manual that was issued recently. It's actually on our website now. And it's a really, really well-informed and a go-to point of reference for guidance to mitigate the COVID impact. It's brilliant. It really is. So as president, I'm really proud of how our members have risen to the challenge. I think engineers are often the unsung heroes. And I think we should really take time to reflect and recognise the hugely valuable contribution they make to both society and the economy.
Yes, I would certainly agree with that, Terry. From my point of view, seeing what's gone on over the last few months, the way the engineering community has responded has just been incredible. I don't think there's enough words to really describe it. It's been quite an amazing opportunity, despite it being a horrendous situation, to see the engineers really step up to the mark. So yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Colin, becoming CEO during such a difficult time internally for the institution must have been hard enough. But then to go into lockdown and have to close the institution building this year, that has to be one of the hardest calls for any CEO. How have you and the staff been coping with this transition to remote working? And what are the positives, do you think, that have come out of this for the IMechE team?
Well, I think there are a lot of positives, Helen, that have come from it, because as you say, back in July 2018, when I got that call and said, are you willing to come and step up and help out? I never dreamed that I'd be doing it from my sitting room. It's a very curious feeling to do, but what's really come through, and Terry's alluded to this, is the ability, because I'm in my sitting room and you're in yours, is that we're interacting, whereas before we'd have been worried about could we catch the train or could we get together or bring two meetings at the same time. It's really facilitated interaction between people. And one of the pieces I think that's extremely lucky is that in the UK, we're sat at the middle of the time zones so that we can engage people in North America over breakfast at the same time as we're engaging people in Hong Kong and Australia over supper. And so the time around the middle of the day is one of the busiest times of the day now for us to get people involved. And Terry has highlighted that when you do get that involved, and he talked about the COVID-19 manual on our website, and I certainly encourage everybody to go and look at the COVID-19 manual. It's right up there on our homepage, the links to it on the website. It's got 10 different authors. Hong Kong particularly put huge effort into it. And all of us who've been involved know the huge different areas that engineers have contributed to dealing with the pandemic. And we wouldn't have been able to do that in the past because we'd have set up a work group that met in London once a month or something like that. And things have just been a lot easier. I think that unfortunately the challenge that comes is that there is no such thing as the working day anymore.
Yeah, tell me about it.
You used to have a situation where you would kind of commute and you would get to work. And I know you, Helen, you used to leave home at 6 o'clock, but you would commute and you'd get to work and you do your work and then you go home. And there was a natural break. Now we've got lots of people working flexibly. We've got lots of people working in different time zones, and you can get interactions 24 hours a day, virtually 7 days a week. So we really are thinking about how we deal with that to ensure that we don't make that bad. So all this good interaction is good. We just don't want to make it into too much interaction.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've recognised quite significantly. Getting emails in the middle of the night and messages on a weekend, and also forgetting what day of the week it is as well, which is something that's a bit strange. But I think we have to be very careful of that sort of issue of burnout, don't we? Definitely. Yeah. Terry, I know that you've been really passionate this year about driving the governance changes forward during your term in office. And despite the lack of being able to meet physically, as Colin's been talking about, how has the implementation group and, of course, the Trustee Board ensured that momentum hasn't been lost and that we're really getting to grips with these important changes that we're making to the institution?
Well, if I leave any legacy, I think it will be that I was part of a leadership team that took the institution through this period of change. As we know, the change was initiated during the presidency of Carolyn Griffiths. And looking back, it was very clear that change was needed. The three major reviews of our governance, our finance, and our disciplinary processes was very thorough and well informed, and they have laid out a framework for what I certainly feel will become a new governance benchmark for a professional engineering institution. And in my year as president-elect, I initiated and chaired the implementation group you've referred to, which is a task and finish group challenged with implementing the recommendations of the reviews. And then when I became president, I handed the chair over to Dr. Kerry Mashford. And I am very grateful indeed to Kerry for the progress she's made as well. And if you asked her, she'd probably say the same as me, in that it's been a really difficult task. It's not easy trying to bring about such sweeping changes in a relatively short space of time. It's required massive resolve. It's required diplomacy, patience, determination. All those things to negotiate workable compromises and find consensus. I think our active members are perhaps the most passionate people you could ever encounter. They really take pride in their institution and want to see it prosper.
Yeah,
but that emotion can create disagreement and conflict. And we've had all that through this process, and I take my hat off to all of those involved, no matter which side of the table they've been on. Understanding different perspectives is absolutely paramount. And those debates on very sensitive issues have helped us to get some great solutions. We're certainly not done yet, but Kerry and the team, they're making really great progress, and they are on track to have the implementation group work completed by the end of my presidential year. And I certainly look forward to supporting them, to achieve that goal. You mentioned the Trustee Board and the role they have played in all of this. Well, the board is a team of 12 people, and they are the ultimate decision-making authority in the institution. And they have had a very tough year. At this stage in my presidential year, we should have had 5 trustee board meetings. We've actually had 12 so far, and that gives you an impression of how busy they've been. And I do consider myself very fortunate to be president at a time when I feel we've probably the strongest trustee board this institution has ever had. It may be a consequence of what happened in 2018, but the level of understanding of the role of a trustee has never been greater. And the commitment and acceptance of the responsibilities of the role goes beyond certainly what I've witnessed in my previous years as a trustee. I have such great confidence in them, and I am genuinely proud of them, to be honest, of what they've achieved collectively. The trustee board is often targeted for criticism, and it is really frustrating when that happens. But I'd like our members to know that we do have probably the best team at the helm of their ship. A team that takes seriously all the feedback they receive, whether it's positive or negative. And they do consider very carefully the decisions they make. They often don't agree amongst themselves and have differing opinions, but that's really what being a trustee is all about. It's about exercising independent thinking, looking at the evidence, the facts, considering different perspectives, debating, and then deciding. And then once we decide, we align behind that decision. It's a very effective way of working. It's what being a trustee is all about, and it is moving the institution forward.
Well, I think, Terry, it would be a sad day if all engineers agreed on something, first time round. I mean, it's very important for us to be able to debate and to discuss. And I absolutely agree. I think everyone who's been involved in this whole process has really committed themselves to making the institution fit for purpose for the 21st century, which is wonderful to hear. And I know we had Kerry on the podcast, the very first show, in fact, and I don't know where she finds the time. She works so hard, bless her. She's amazing. So it's really good to hear that that process is still continuing, and that you're all at least keeping sane as you go through this process. So that's great to hear. Thank you, Colin. I was going back through the annual report. And you said that 2020 would be our year of values. It would be an opportunity for the institution to demonstrate the very best behaviours and cultures in everything we do. What have been the highlights, really, for you in 2020 in terms of the way members have addressed behaviours and cultures, particularly during the pandemic?
Well, it's very simple, Helen, which is that it's on the agenda. That every meeting you go to now, generally they start with a diversity and inclusion moment. They'll start with some discussion about the values. I was at council just last week, and one of the key items started with an apology. And so I do think that we're encouraged that with the 5 values that we've put forward, And we've run some workshops over the last month or so, and 170 of our active members have been involved in those workshops. And one of the main early recommendations is that our 5 values need to be very memorable. And they've suggested 5 words, and they're saying, let's come up with 5 words. And I offer them today. They haven't agreed these yet, but the 5 values are around things like respect, listening, integrity, innovation, and contribution. And I think that when you say that, okay, we're going to interact on that basis, you suddenly, as Terry said, you can have disagreement, but at the end of the day, you have a professional approach that means that the institution can make a contribution to improving the world. You remember, Helen, when we worked together 4 or 5 years ago, there was a piece of work called Stay or Go about women in engineering.
Yes, yeah, fantastic piece of work.
It's a report that's on our website, and I somewhat encourage people to look back at that, because it dealt with the fact that women tend to get forced out of our profession, because if you can't toughen up, then you better get out. And that was a message that women felt rather more than men. I think men also get it. But this whole concept that if you can't cut it, then you need to go, I think we're really working now to say it's not like that at all. It's about making a contribution rather than winning a fight. And Terry highlighted in his part there about the ability of engineers to disrespect each other because I think it's a core weakness. It's almost taught that we should disrespect each other.
Yeah, it is.
We're taught to problem solve. We're taught to get the data and work out what the right answer. You remember when you did exams at school, you could get 10 out of 10 because you would get the right answer. And once we think individually that we've got the right answer, we can be very dismissive, even rude about people who have a different answer, and whether it's on climate change or the future of our profession, or as Terry alluded to, what the governance, finance and code of conduct reviews are trying to intend, we're actually very dismissive that, no, I've thought this through and this has got to be the way forward. And so the opportunity to respect, to listen, to act with integrity, and then to innovate so that at the end of the day we make a contribution is what we're here for. And I'm genuinely very encouraged. I think this is the year of our values.
That's really nice to hear, Colin. And I would absolutely agree. I think one thing that I've learned from this year is, with the amount of time I'm spending with headphones on and listening to conferences and meetings and those sort of things, I am having to listen more to what people are saying and really pay attention. And I think that has made a big difference. I think when you're sat in a room with lots of people and they're talking over the top of each other, you perhaps don't listen to what the emotions and feelings of people are as much as you would do when you're focused very much on people's voices. So I think you're right there. I think there's some great opportunities this year to really change the way that we listen and innovate. Terry, I also read in the same report you were likened going forward into the future as having a forward-facing seat on a train. I thought that was a great way of thinking of the future. So, as we head into 2021, what are you looking forward to, and what are your hopes for the institution this coming year?
Okay, well, it is an analogy I keep using, and I think I'm in danger of perhaps starting to annoy some people with it a little bit. But anyway, I think it's a good one. But it does capture well the fact that we need to look to the future and not dwell in the past. So the former is absolutely in our gift to influence, and the latter clearly isn't. It's happened and it's gone, and we can't change it. And I think, a new year is always a good time. You can reflect by all means, but it's a good time to think about the future. From my vantage point as president, I'm seeing good things lying ahead for the IMechE. We've taken steps to make the institution more engaging and accessible to all our members, especially the members who really want to get actively involved. Many have said that it's difficult to get involved. We've listened to what they've said. You may have seen the recent campaigns to get expressions of interest for members to get involved in our nominations committee and our strategy committee. And there'll be many more similar requests coming through the next year. And what's really, really exciting is that we're getting expressions of interest to get involved from members who haven't previously engaged with the institution actively. And I think that is absolutely brilliant. That's absolutely what we should be doing to get new people, fresh thoughts coming in, and then really trying to get them engaged in pushing the whole thing forward. So I think 2021, it will see the governance process completed, as I mentioned earlier, and I do feel we will be setting a new benchmark for PEI, and I hope we will be able to properly recognise the efforts of the many people who've made that happen, maybe with a celebratory beer, who knows, and wouldn't it be great and very symbolic to be able to shake their hands and thank them for their contribution? It's almost unheard of in today's world, but hopefully, tomorrow's world might be a little bit different with the vaccine at our assistance. Next year, we'll also be focusing our attention on our HQ building, our very iconic HQ building. It is in desperate need of some attention, and we are keen to find a sustainable solution that will ensure it will be there for future generations of mechanical engineers to enjoy. So Helen Rivers, who is a trustee, has been leading a team looking into the issues the building has, and it does have issues. I'll not dwell on what they are, but it does have issues. It's a very, very old building, and ways to address the challenges of how we can create a means of refurbishing it and also adapting it to be a better workplace for our staff and a better place for our members to meet virtually, physically, and I am seeing some really good creative ideas. So do watch this space. You'll be hearing more about this through next year, and we will be doing our best to keep our members in the loop and seeking their views as well, because ultimately, they will need to decide on what we do with this very important asset that we have. I think 2021 will also be a year. Well, it is a year where we will say farewell to Colin as our CEO, which will be very, very sad for all of us. As Colin mentioned, he stepped up to the mark, when the institution was going through tough times, to be honest, in 2018. And he has been an inspirational leader. He was, without question, the right person at the right time. And he's steadied the ship, and he's helped us to set a new course. And I am immensely grateful to Colin for everything he's done. But I'd like to quickly just add the fact that he's not done yet. Okay, so don't hang anything up yet, Colin. I have initiated a search for a new CEO, and Colin is actually supporting me in that, which is quite unusual, but I'm very, very grateful for his support in that process. And our plan is to have a new CEO in office around mid-year next year. I look forward to be able to formally thank Colin for his contribution, reflecting on the journey where we've. I think we've all, perhaps on the leadership team, we've been in the forward-facing seats, to use that analogy again. And Colin has certainly helped us to be there and to shape the institution and get it fit and ready for the future, for what will be, I'm sure, a much brighter future. So I'm very grateful to Colin.
Oh, that's lovely, Terry. That's really nice to hear. I think sometimes it's probably more likely the forward-facing seat on a roller coaster rather than a train, I guess. It's probably the experience. Maybe that's the new term of phrase that you might want to use. But Colin, Terry has hit on something that I couldn't finish this interview really without mentioning you stepping down, obviously, as CEO. You have been a member of staff, dare I say it, for 16 years, is that right?
That's right, 16 years.
Yeah, and obviously a member of the institution for many years then is polite to mention in company. But what are you looking forward to? What are your hopes for the institution in the coming years? And also, what are you looking forward to doing with the time that you're not going to be CEO? I think is a great question.
Well, I think the institution's in a great place, Helen. We've had a situation where through things like the Grenfell Tower disaster and the Dame Judith Hackett review of tall buildings, that professionalism has got to be the way of the future. And we've got to understand not how do we race to the bottom, but how do we race to the top. And I do feel that an institution that prides itself on professionalism and its membership being peer-reviewed is in exactly the right place to ride the wave of the fact that we've got to get better at doing these sorts of things. And at the AGM, there was somebody who asked a question this May, September. It wasn't May, was it? We had to delay it because of COVID. who asked a question about volunteering, and they were thinking about, in the railway division, and they were thinking about becoming the chair of the railway division. And I reassured them that the institution is absolutely fixated on professionalism and the opportunity to improve the world through engineering, and to steal Terry's, to look forward as to how those things can be done, rather than look back at the details of governance and the kind of the way we manage ourselves. Much more about the contribution we can make to society. And Terry's highlighted the fact that NOMCO is running. And I just want to put the large numbers there. We had 4 places on NOMCO, and we had over 40 people come forward. And as he said, many not come forward before. We're now in the process of putting 6 people on our strategy committee. And we've had 125 applications for it. There's going to be 119 slightly disappointed people. But in terms of the future of the institution, isn't it fantastic that people want to come forward and they want to improve the world through engineering? For me, it's obviously fantastic when people thank you, and I would like to feel when I step down that I gave it my best, and however it worked out, I was there. I put some hours in, and we did make some success. We definitely steadied the ship financially and from a governance point of view. But my work in the future will be, I want to continue to try and inspire people that engineering is a great thing, Helen, that the people, especially the young, should look to engineering as a career, and what we can do to support teachers and schools especially. And the one thing I want to do is to respect other people, to listen to what they say, to act with integrity, to innovate the way that I do things, and always to try and make a contribution.
Well, Colin, I don't think anybody would deny the fact that you have made a significant contribution to the institution over the years, both as a member of staff and as a member. And I pride myself in being able to say that, you have been a superb support to me and to many, many members over the years, and with your advice and your encouragement. And thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with you, but also the opportunities for me to think about how I can develop as an engineer. So, and I'm sure there are many people listening who will feel the same way. So thank you very much for all that you've done.
Thank you, Helen.
Well, gentlemen, thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Helen,
for your continued dedication to the institution, and all the best to you and your families in 2021. It really only leaves me to wish all our listeners, on your behalf, of course, wherever you are in the world, a safe and happy holiday season from all of us at the I2I podcast. You've been listening to Impulse to Innovation, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to share any news or any feedback with us, then please email us, podcast@imeche.org. All the information on this episode can be found in the episode notes.